Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This week's show is about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of Dark Winds. Great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So the season finale gives us clarity because I wasn't 100% sure what they were doing with the Widover situation. It seemed like they were leaning towards him being a dirty cop, and it turns out, yes, he was a dirty cop. I guess it's just like we never really found out whether there was a deeper motive behind that or not, but it's like, yep, that's all it was. He's actually the one that set up the robbery because he found out about something that James was a part of before. It's like, and it's like, right, you got snitched out, and now, like, hey, I know what you're up to. I know you're planning another heist. I want to be a part of it. I can tell you. I can even hook you up with the pilot. So the guy that they killed, maybe that's extra reason why. I mean, James already has his position just kind of like... I think he would have probably done it regardless, but I think there's extra motive to do it because that's Widover's guy, so you probably had extra reason to kill Chip. Poor guy. But yeah, the reveal, and I brought it up last episode. I was like, oh man, how is Jim going to contact Bernadette? I'm an idiot. Didn't even cross my mind. It's like, right, you can speak a language he doesn't understand. But I thought like it was like, oh, he's going to try and contact her. But luckily, which we see, I think that's the first time we've seen another deputy besides Bernadette and Jim. So I thought that was interesting. But she's like, yo, Bernadette went with Widover, and she contacts him. I love that conversation where Bernadette was like, he was like, oh, did anyone ever tell you you're too beautiful to be a cop? And she's like, yeah, all the time. You? And he didn't know how to respond. He was like, no. Because her throwing it back at him like completely took him off guard. But Jim wonder, like, he's in on it. So when they get to I love how every storyline converges in that spot, because Joe is already there going after Frank and James. At the same time, Bernadette separated from Widover, and then Jim is on his way there. They forced the father of the Mormon family to go to Dan's place to get a van so they can escape. So at the same time, Jim is skulking around. I actually thought he would have saved the family first, especially when you saw the dynamite lined up. You're like, yeah, that family's probably not going to make it out of here. So they're probably going to get the vehicle and then like bury everyone. There's no way. Like, once again, they've seen your faces. They were like a means to an end. Like, I figured he'd use them to try and escape as leverage, but I was like, there's no way you're going to just let those people go. Like, now that they've seen your face, they could identify you, and that'd be too much of an issue. So when it's all said and done, I think he would have just blown the place up, probably killed the father or left him there with his wife and children, and then like blew the cave up to like kind of cave it in and leave them all there to die. But luckily Jim was there, and their attempts to smoke him out didn't work. I really thought I was like, what's he going to do? I was like, oh yeah, the fire your bullets. Or like, I mean, only one of them popped off, but I guess that's all he needed. I mean, luckily, one shot James in the leg, so it gave him the opportunity to get out. While Bernadette was sneaking in, she got the Mormon family out. Jim confronts Widover. And it's interesting because Widover's like, do you know why I chose you? He's like, why? Because you needed someone who could speak Indian or something like that. And he was like, no, it's mainly because I needed someone who would take this job, who would put themselves first and foremost, which is kind of sad that he knows, like, Jim, you're such a selfish prick. I knew you would put your own pride, like, so I knew it. I picked you for that reason, which is kind of sad to know, like, oh, that's why. It's not even just like, oh, because you'd fit in. It's like, well, you speaking the native tongue also doesn't hurt either. It's actually icing on top, but the main reason is because I know you're a selfish prick and you would do anything to, like, self-preservation and look out for yourself. I guess Widover thought he hit Jim in, like, a vital spot. It's like everyone got lucky with, like, the shots this episode. Just kind of getting, like, winged in the arm and stuff. But at the same time, the father, the Mormon father who was driving to like go pick up a van from Dan, ended up crashing. Lo and behold, who's one of the people that finds him is Guy, and I was like, oh, now once again everything's converging. Like the world has a way of kind of balancing itself out. Because I was like, okay, he's going to end up killing James, because James is the one who actually killed Anna. So I thought that's what's going to happen. And it ended up being the case. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but him shooting Widover was interesting because Widover was over there talking mad shit about Anna. But it was interesting that he does seem like he had, I guess because he was probably a good cop at one point in time, because he's like, right, sorry, Joe. He's like, right, he's kind of like disappointed. He's like, yeah, I'm kind of, it's like, I'm sorry, like, I'm sad that it's kind of had to come down to this, but, because Joe was like, yeah, I thought despite everything, we were always on the same side. He's like, yeah, I wanted that too. He's just kind of sorry that he's like, I'm legitimately feel bad about all this, because he didn't know things were going to spiral out into like the murder case that it was going to be, that James would kill his own grandfather and kill Anna. So things kind of spiraled a lot out of control. It's like, right, this was simply supposed to be a bank robbery. I wonder, is he even that mad about the chip thing? He doesn't seem too concerned, but in this moment he did seem like he was apologetic, which I think is an interesting parallel between him and James. Both of them, they did what they needed to do for, Widover, everything was self-preservation, but also like getting paid. Everything James did, he did for the larger cause. He's like, I did it for our people. Poor Frank got shot, and I almost thought he was going to strangle James at the end. I was like, oh, if I'm going down, I'm going to take you down with me. So, like I said, even to that point when he thought he had killed Joe, he was like, right, I'm sorry, Joe, but, you may not believe me kind of at this moment, but I forgot what it was he was saying, but he was kind of saying, like, basically, like, I am sorry, and I'm butchering it. I don't remember the exact thing he said, but he was trying to, once again, he did seem genuinely apologetic about it, but it doesn't stop you from being a complete and utter asshole. But, yeah, he was going to bury Joe alive. Luckily, Jim and Bernadette came. Bernadette meets up with Joe. And then there's that back and forth between Widover still trying to offer Jim. Like, I wasn't worried. I was like, I know Jim's not going to take that money, because it's like, after everything, what you were willing to do to Joe, because Joe's a better person than you would ever be. He's a better person than either of us will ever be. So, like, even at the end here, like, after everything that's going down, Jim wouldn't, do that. So it's like, right, all of this, you'll get 10 to 15, which obviously they didn't talk about it, but it's like, yeah, a cop in jail, that doesn't end well. So I was like, fine, arrest me, but before he could, Guy ended up killing him. And I thought what was going to happen was that Jim was going to take the fall by being like, oh, I'm the one that shot him. I guess with the trajectory, like it being from behind and everything, you'd have to, how would you set that up, And Bernadette came in time to see all that go down. But they frame it to make it look like Frank and Widover ended up killing each other in the process. So, because it's like, right, we know Joe knows what happened, but if we burn down the mine, we burn down all that, we cave in the mine, we get rid of any evidence, we don't have to worry about it. So, did just that, and made sure to bury the money with him. And I think that's kind of I guess to sell the story more, but also for Jim, it's like, once again, like, I have no interest in this money, blood money, which I thought was interesting. Widower was like, you've been taking my blood money, because ever since I've been a part of this, you've been working, so, like, either just saying, like, maybe implying that he's done some shady stuff in the past, or maybe it's just simply to imply, like, that for every step you've been taking along this investigation, you've been taking my blood money, because you're kind of being complicit in this and complicit in me doing all this stuff. And despite you haven't really been going about this trying to solve a murder. You've been looking out for your self-interest. So I think that's kind of really the intricacies of what he means about, like, you've been taking my money, my blood money. But yeah. When it's all said and done, though, there was that interesting conversation between Joe and Ben. Because when it was all said and done, for Ben, it's like he wasn't going to kill Joe. He was going to kill himself to kind of be a martyr for the cause. Because for him, everything he's done, it's like, it's for me, it's for you. And it's just like, once again, he justifies it by saying like, right, some sacrifices have to be made along the way, even kind of implying like what happened with JJ wasn't an accident. He's like, that's kind of what sparked everything for him. Like, because I think the Buffalo Society probably existed before them, but he probably really kicked up his action after the fact. But when it's all said and done, that we never really got a complete answer to that, but he was like, right, you and me both know that wasn't an accident. I don't know whether that's him just saying that, not really like maybe he doesn't have any evidence to prove it, but it's just like, it's just too coincidental, so, and, because he talks about the fact is that he's the champion of Ghost. And I thought, he's like, right, he's trying to do everything he can. He's following their voice to reshape this world, make this world a better world. And I love that line from Joe, which was basically saying that, basically it was like the small beauty in the world. I didn't know how to interpret that. Like, either like, right, all you'll be doing is making small moments of beauty in this world in the grand scheme of all the crap, or is he saying like all we can do is live and enjoy those small moments and see those small moments of beauty in all the terribleness that is this world. We don't need to add more terribleness to it. We got to see the beauty and embrace those small moments, because they're what we live for. Let that be what we focus on. Move towards, we decide our own future. Let's stop chasing ghosts of the past, which I think kind of plays into why, like, when it was all said and done, finally taking his own advice, because he saw what happened with Ben. Because he said, like, you and me, Ben, we're so much alike. If things went differently in either one of our lives, we could have been like, the fact is, we could have been in this fight together, but I don't condone your approach on how you handle this. But the fact is, we could have been on the same side of this, because he knows all that Ben went through. Because for Ben, it's like, for the first time in forever, he's finally free to make his own choices. He doesn't have to listen to someone else, whether it's a nun at church, whether it's a drill sergeant in the army, an FBI agent. Like, he always had to answer to someone else, and that freedom. And Joe talked about that power, but it's kind of like too much power, because now that you have that freedom and that power, got a little intoxicating. So it wasn't just about the cause, it was just that power that you felt for the first time. And I think that kind of speaks volumes for someone who felt so powerless for so much of his life, to finally have power, to be in control. It kind of corrupted him, and I think you kind of waver and kind of lose your way on the path that you had kind of chosen. But Joe was trying to get him not to kill himself, because he's like, yeah, I'm going to be a father. And Joe's like, not in the sense that you think. I don't know, because I guess it's like, right, you're not going to be in that baby's life, and I would make sure of it, everyone would make sure of it. And even if you did, you probably get like, Sally probably would want nothing to do with you. I don't know, that might be how they would chalk that up. But Joe was trying to get him to turn himself in, because it's like, right, we don't need more death. We can end this, like, with you going to jail, but Ben doesn't want that, and ends up killing himself in the end. So I guess it all works out to some extent. Don't know about Sally's mom. Once again, it seemed like she was in that house when it burned down, so it seems like she's as good as done. I don't know if Sally... We see Sally at the end of the episode. I don't know if she's too heartbroken about that. Once again, kind of a dark spirit, so you don't know if, like, that kind of left her mom and went somewhere else, or is she out there still... I don't know. Like, the fact is Wanda got better, Bernadette got better, kind of implies, like... Well, because that doesn't mean we've seen... Well, I kept saying Ben. I'm sorry. James. Because, once again, now that James is out of the picture, we could always end up getting Ben, because they are twins. So that could always be a future storyline in that regard. Because we did see that, once again, I brought it up last episode, there was that jar that had Ben's hair in it, so he could have been cursed as well. But the moment, so that he was out of the picture, so that James could pretend to be him. But now that everyone else kind of got recovered, maybe Ben it has as well. So the real Ben might show up potentially next season, and I think would be an interesting development. It'd be kind of a complicated thing. Him kind of coming home to clean up stuff, properly send a goodbye to his grandfather, and obviously knowing all that his brother's been up to, and trying to make up for those mistakes of his brother or something. I don't know. That'd be interesting. Whether it be like a full-blown storyline or not, maybe not. Or maybe he isn't even alive anymore. Maybe he wouldn't even bother coming back after everything. Maybe there'd be no reason to. Or maybe this be the extra reason to. Who knows? A lot of that's interesting stuff to consider. But yeah, and like I said, at the end, they're burning JJ's jacket because they've been holding on to it for so long. They were supposed to have gotten rid of it before now. But now it's like, yeah, just I think Joe is now finally able to kind of move forward. You see that Guy's there, Emma, Sally, Bernadette, and obviously for Bernadette, you know, JJ was like a brother to her. Obviously, everything between Anna and Guy feeling responsible for, you know, I mean, not you know, having been on the other side of that now, you know, paid his respects by being there. And then we skip to 3 months later, and it seems like Jim is back. He left the FBI because the way Widover was painting the picture that he was going to take the fall for everything. But it's like, no, that's not going to work. It's like, no, that guy who gave you the file and everything, oh, he'll happily lie to screw you over just because it's like, oh, because the promotion that you got, of course he'd want it. Like, there's no way he's going to let you take that. So to pay you back if it means screwing you over, of course he'd lie. So everything could fall and make it seem like Jim's the one responsible. So it's like, yeah. That could have been like, you know, Widover's ace in the hole, but it obviously didn't play out like that. But yeah, he's back home, and I guess going forward, we could probably see him making a home for himself there. Because I actually don't know where he's been. Maybe he's been staying in like a motel or hotel. They've never made a point to show you where he's been staying while he's been back on the reservation. Either way, but it seems like, yeah, probably, you know, it's like it's a nice, beautiful piece of land, so he's probably going to end up making more of a home. But Joe kind of, you know, it's like, oh, like, we'd be happy to have you back. He's like, even after everything, it's like, yeah, you know, I think I can kind of work my way looking past all that, and we can be good. But then Joe does ask him about what happened. He's like, I was just looking out for a friend of a friend, which I thought was sweet. It's like, right, I'm helping out Guy because he is a friend of yours, and obviously your history, and you're a friend of mine, so like I wanted to help out a friend of a friend. So who else knows the truth? Bernadette does, and it's like, yeah, he's like, yeah. And the moment he starts asking questions, I was like, at first I was like, wait, is it Widover? Is he actually still alive? Because it was like, yeah, the missing money. I was like, Jim didn't take the money. I was like, because we did see him throw it in there. I was like, not unless last second he took it. But I'm like, I didn't think he did. But then I was like, could it be that Widover actually survived and he's still out there? But it's like, no. Turns out the one that's still out there is Frank. Because I was like, I knew like Joe was edging towards like a whole like, oh, there was only one body found, the way he kept pushing it like that. I was like, there's only one body. They did make that whole point about Frank not dying, and seems like he holds very true to that name because he managed to get out of there. I guess he was playing possum the entire time. Managed to get out with half the money, so I'm curious, is he going to continue the calls or not? Because maybe he believes in the calls, I don't know. Because Ben, for him, it's like, he didn't agree with all that Ben did. Ben killing his own grandfather, killing Anna, the whole Raymond situation either. Like, it was more of their people's blood spilt for the calls. I think he's a believer in the calls, and maybe he'll actually do something good with it, or maybe he'll just disappear. I mean, because he is going to be wanted for Widover's death. And, you know, it's like, right, I guess you don't have to worry about him coming forth to testify against you. And just Jim saying, like, wow, Joe being like, wow, you are just a lucky son of a bitch, Jim. And it's like, yeah, things did kind of end up miraculously working out in that regard. But when it's all said and done, it's like, I think Jim wanted to kind of apologize, but Joe was like, no, kind of like, I know. And so that's where things kind of end. There's still plenty of leftover threads, like the whole, everything associated with, like, I keep forgetting, is it like it's a mine, right? The one that like ended up exploding and stuff, right? So I'm assuming like continuation with that. The guy who bought it, I always keep forgetting his name. I think it's BJ. Him, like, we got little like 2 scenes with him this season, but I think maybe he'd be more prominent next season. There's that. There's also the guy, the third guy in that whole operation. To be fair, the Mormon family did see his face, so they could, but he's working with BJ, but he could have gotten his money, helped out with that, and then bounced. Because he pointed Leaphorn in the right direction, so maybe that's all he needed, and Home Dude's like, yeah, as long as I get paid, I'm fine. Like, so we might not see any more of him either. He might kind of disappear in the winds as well, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see what ends up happening next. The show was renewed for a second season, I want to say a couple weeks ago. So obviously you'd assume it's kind of like that Bosch and God, plenty of shows have been doing that lately. I think shows in this format of, right, not very procedural in the regard of just like it being a crime drama. It has an overarching story, but like there's not like procedural elements of like, oh, it's a different case every day. It's like every episode is about the main overarching plot. Maybe whether they'll really get into there being smaller cases or not. I mean, because everything ended up connecting to the larger case this season. So I could definitely see a lot of this cast obviously returning, wondering will we get any more Wanda next season? Probably more Lester. Dan, just because of everything, I'm curious. I mean, he pointed them in the right direction, so he might serve the purpose as being kind of a middleman to some extent for what they... I don't know. I definitely could see like a role for him going forward, kind of being like this pop-in character from time to time that maybe he could be like kind of a side informant that kind of helps some stuff. I don't know. Obviously, everything with Jim and Bernadette, kind of continuation of that story, is going to be interesting. Joe did talk about it, that Sally, obviously it's 3 months later, Sally did have the baby. So, obviously having Sally and the baby in the house, because she kind of has, well, I think kind of solidifying that they kind of settled on letting her stay. I think now that he's finally able to kind of move forward, he's willing to let Sally and the baby stay, and I think it's good for both him and Emma. But yeah, I'm curious what kind of case we're going to get next season. Are we going to get kind of like the kind of more mystical elements we got this season? Will there be any more of that next season? Maybe, maybe not. It's going to be interesting to see how our trio of Joe, Jim, Bernadette, how next season's story plays out for them. Much like this season, I think, I was reading already that the next season is also going to be 6 episodes as well. So, once again, like there's a long list of books in this Jim and Joe Leaphorn and Jim Chi books. There's a lot of them, so there's a lot of source material to pull from. So, once again, as someone who's never read the books, but just knowing that there's a lot to pull from is definitely going to be interesting to see what next season has in store for us. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.